Let's see, live stream. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to the Zoom call with Vanessa Dyer from Menopause Prep. Thanks for being here today, Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I know that so many of us have questions about nutrition, menopause, perimenopause, all of those things. So I am really excited to pick your brain and get your expert knowledge and share with everyone what we need to know about this very important topic. How did you get into this? Like, how did you become a dietitian?
Oh, wow. That's well, so I decided I wanted to become a dietitian when I was like 20 years old. I'm 32 now. And it really started out when I wasn't getting my questions answered by doctors. So it started off when I was like 17. I call it the alien invasion. So when I was 17, I felt like the worst thing happened to me. I got a yeast infection. And so I told my mom, she went to the store, got me, I think it was like Monistat, whatever, took it, and it came back like within weeks. And my mom's like, well, that's kind of weird. So maybe you should go to the gynecologist. So long story short, I went to, I think, like 4 different gynecologists because I kept getting yeast infections back to back to back nonstop from 17 to, I would say, 19 years old. And if you can imagine, that was very depressing, especially when every time I asked, like, why am I getting them back to back like this? No one can give me an answer. Everything was, oh, well, you're a woman, it happens. Or try eating some yogurt. I love that one. Try eating some yogurt.
The cure-all.
And yeah, so I started doing my own research, a lot of research, like hours all day. And I realized that I am what I eat. I pretty much was feeding, like giving my body was like the perfect environment for yeast to grow because I wasn't giving my body what it needed. And so that's also when I realized, well, doctors are really there to diagnose and prescribe you medication because they don't have that additional information that people actually need to solve the problem. Because doctors, most physicians, and I'm talking about like physicians, not like holistic doctors, those are completely different scope. So they're really there just to diagnose you, to give you medication. So it's the same thing that goes on with most health conditions. And the interesting thing about menopause and perimenopause is gynecologists actually don't get any training in that, and physicians don't get any training in that.
Gynecologists don't get any training.
Yes, they don't.
Oh.
They don't get any training, so they're not able to tell you when you're going through the hormonal changes, when you might start, and what can happen, and they can't do an assessment.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Unless they go out of their way to learn about it, like how I am, and to do as much research, but it's not part of their training. And they have so much out, like other things they need to learn, that it's just, I mean, for someone to kind of go out of their scope, that does take a lot of like brain power. But there are some other, like there are some holistic doctors that do specialize, like it's just their niche, like they're just focusing on perimenopause, menopause. But for a general physician or a general gynecologist, no.
They're not going to know a ton of in-depth stuff about that. There's so many things that I want to like extract from what you said, like one being you are what you eat. Like we've probably all heard that. And I think it can be something that we take with a grain of salt. Like, yeah. Like at that time, what were you eating when you were
oh my gosh. Okay.
these
so
infections?
Typical teenage diet. So in high school, I did not drink any water. Like I've probably taken like several sips from this already. It's just water. That's all I drink now. But when I was in high school, It was all V8 Splash, Cherry Coke, Vanilla Coke. Those were my favorite. I even played lacrosse, so I didn't drink water
Oh,
out in the
wow.
sun.
Yes.
I was addicted to sugar and like carbs. So a lot of pasta, a lot of bread, a lot of cookies, cupcakes, brownies. I mean, everything and anything that was sugar, 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 carbs, carbs, carbs. I mean, if 17-year-old me saw how I ate today, be like, that's not me. Like, that's not future me. So, and I just wasn't taking care of myself. So I wasn't giving my body any nutrients that it needed. Wasn't getting, wasn't protecting my immune system, wasn't drinking any water, I was dehydrated. So perfect environment for yeast, really.
And how many people eat way too much sugar and don't really eat a whole lot of like actual real foods as adults? And
right.
then, you know, we're having the symptoms, and sometimes we don't connect that to the powerful effect that nutrition is, that you
Right.
are what you eat. Like, it has a huge influence
Yeah.
on our overall health in
Yeah.
so many ways.
I am actually very grateful that happened, because if it didn't, I wouldn't be a dietitian. And I love educating people. I love when people are like, wow, no one's ever told me this. Wow, I had no idea. Because it's a lot more, nutrition is a lot more than eating your 3 servings of vegetables and 3 servings of fruits a day. Like, people really underestimate what it actually entails. And
I'd love you to elaborate on
that. So for example, like right now I have a hot flash / night sweat challenge available for anyone that wants to do it. And the goal of that is, so when hormones drop, it confuses the hypothalamus in the brain. The hypothalamus is involved with controlling our body temperature. That's one of the many roles that it does, but one of it's controlling our body temperature. So when estrogen and progesterone drop, or just progesterone, it confuses the hypothalamus, and that's where we get those random feelings of being hot, and it makes us sweat. And another misconception with hormonal changes is we only get hot flashes. Well, night sweats is also part of that progress as well. And so in order to keep the hypothalamus running properly, working properly, is eating polyphenol rich foods. And polyphenols is just a type of antioxidant. So with that challenge, I think it's 12 or 15, I think it's 12 different polyphenol rich foods. All that person needs is a food scale, and it's common foods. I mean, I wasn't picking exotic foods, because there are like,
I'm doing the challenge, and I was like, oh, okay, these are some things I already have, and just being intentional about adding in enough of them.
Yes. So there are over 6,000 polyphenols. So I wasn't doing anything crazy. So like black tea, green tea, almonds, beans, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries. So it's just very basic foods. It's just weighing that out, getting those at least 600 milligrams of polyphenols a day to see how your body reacts to those additional polyphenols, to see how your hypothalamus starts operating. So just things like that. Like I always tell people, like, just going off topic, just for another example, like I tell people your immune system is a lot more than vitamin C and zinc. Like, it's a lot more than that. There's several other components from food. And so that's just one of the examples. And that's just me going really deep into it, because my friend is a dietitian. She's like, I don't know half of the stuff, and I don't want to, because she's just.
Yeah, and you're niched, right? Like, you're focusing very specifically on women in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah, and
perimenopausal.
I just love researching things. Like, I've done a lot of research on the relationship between food and mental health, for example. Like, that's one of my huge favorite connection. Yeah, like that's one of my favorite topics. Is, I don't know if other dietitians have favorite minerals, but my favorite mineral is magnesium.
Oh, I love magnesium. Love it. I was on a podcast called Electro Magnesium, and this lady's like
awesome.
all about magnesium. I was like, oh, I gotta reach out to her, because I love magnesium too.
Yeah, so 50% of Americans don't get enough magnesium. And I actually did a talk on this at a company 2 months ago, about how magnesium is so important in creating those neurotransmitters, endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. And it just really like wowed them. Like, wow, I didn't even think about that. And vitamin D is also needed to make that. So I always tell people magnesium is for your mood. So magnesium is for your mood. So it's just things like that. Like people just really don't think about, they just really think about, oh, well, nutrition is just not eating fast food and making sure I get my food groups.
Right. It's like, well, what are you eating in those food groups, and what is your specific need and your specific goal based on where you're at as a woman?
Right.
Where are you hormonally, and what do you really need? It sounds like at least 600 milligrams of these polyphenol rich foods is a starting point. And would you say like the person eating a standard American diet, which is a majority of people, right? Like some people might get some fruits and vegetables here and there, like, I do drink some water, but overall, like eating a reasonably amount of processed food, like, are most people getting this 600 polyphenols, like most women in their 30s and 40s?
No, because of the perception of food, for one. I've been a dietitian for in 2 days, we'll make it 5 years.
Happy anniversary.
So, and I've had, I would say about 300 clients, and they're all so different. And just their perception of food. And also with food comes trauma as well. What that person learned in their culture, what that person learned from their family members, what they hear, what they see and hear on like TikTok, social media, YouTube. So it's very interesting. And it never gets old. Like I never get bored of it. I love it. So even like when I tell people, menstrual cramps and like painful menstrual symptoms are nutritional, they're like, what? Like, they were like, wait, what? My doctor didn't tell you. I'm like, your doctor's not going to know that information.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, something really important, like your doctor diagnoses and prescribes, like we definitely need that. There are times we definitely need that.
Oh yeah.
And like if we could all have this more collaborative approach, like, okay, this is what the dietitian does. This is what your physical therapist will do. And like, even as a patient from a consumer standpoint, recognizing that it's going to probably take a team to get you what you need to, know, to help you optimize your health, or like from different resources, right? Other than just one avenue, because it takes different angles to create that wellness.
Oh yeah. And I always tell people, if you're working with a dietitian or nutritionist, talk to your doctor, because there are some people that just, I'm just going to work with a nutritionist and get off my blood pressure meds. It's like, don't do that.
Right. Yeah. Everybody work together, and you're the one in the middle. So like, it's really from a patient standpoint, we get to advocate for ourselves and like communicate, right? Like you said, to the doctor, hey, I'm working with a dietitian. I'm getting off of I want to get off my medication. This is what I'm going to do, but not just stopping them. Same thing with like antidepressants, right? Like,
and there are some people that really just refuse to go to the doctor, which is not good. Because when they're sick, it's like, you want to know if it's a serious infection. Like you want to know if, like my brother, he has been very congested for months, and he went to the hospital because he had a swollen, his neck started swelling up, he couldn't breathe. And they tested him for strep, was negative, flu negative, COVID negative. And so they just diagnosed him as sinusitis, like really bad sinusitis and tonsillitis. And I'm like, brother, gotta get like an allergy test, because you might be allergic to grass, like you might be allergic to dust or something
you're exposed to every day. Yeah.
Right. And so like, do that, we can roll that out, then we can maybe roll out like food sensitivities, because some people who are prone to tonsillitis actually have like a milk sensitivity, like a dairy sensitivity.
Okay.
So but there are some people like, oh, well, I'm just going to do my herbal tinctures and cure my colds. It's like, well, you don't know if you have like a serious bacteria infection where you do need antibiotics. So I do, like, I know that sometimes I do come off anti-doctor, but it's just making people aware of what doctors are there for.
Yes.
Like I love my doctor. He's pro, like he'll tell people, no, you need to see a dietitian, you need to see a dietitian. I'm here to like prescribe you, but everything else, like I can't help you with. So,
there's so much power in our food. Like you said, that food really has that ability to heal, right? Like let thy food be the medicine. And I think we can get away from that. Like, I'll just take a pill.
Mhm.
Because in the moment, it seems like it's quicker. It seems like it's an easier
Right.
answer. And long term, like what is the long term effects of that? I
Mhm.
mean, yes, sometimes you have to take whatever
Mhm.
medication
Yeah.
as well. If you were going to give some direction to women in their perimenopausal years, what would you, or tips or like advice, what would you say?
Um, I would tell them to not try to look stuff up on their own, because there's so much. One of my goals is actually trying to get, like, I'm building a very large referral list. So women helping women. Because, like, I
Nice.
tell people, like, I specialize in nutrition. That's my focus. That is my expertise. That is literally my scope of practice. That's what I went to school for. I'm not a therapist and I'm not a doctor. Um, I'm not a chiropractor. So there are some things, like, I'll tell people, okay, we'll rule this out, but I can refer you to someone that can probably help you. So to answer your question, like, I tell people to sign up for Menopause Prep, because they'll be getting the information they won't find from their gynecologist. So what I was seeing when I was researching my audience, what I was seeing a lot of was honestly a lot of upset and frustrated women having all these concerns and worries, these changes going on with their body, and they weren't getting their questions answered because they didn't know who to ask. They didn't know who to ask. And that's generally what happens. And it's something that my partner in crime, as I call him, we're always talking about, is people only know what they know. And if you
Right.
only know what you know, then you only know what certain questions to ask.
And you're
Like,
limited.
yeah, like when I met him, he didn't even know, like, he can ask certain questions or what questions to ask his doctor, because it didn't even occur to him. And I taught him a lot. He's like, I had no idea this is how cholesterol actually worked, and like what was going on in my body and stuff like that. So, but he'll love telling people, my girlfriend's a dietitian, my girlfriend does this, my girlfriend does that. But yeah, just to sign up with Menopause Prep, and I can give you the link for my newsletter. Because with that, I feature other women in my newsletter as well. It's like, this person does this. So like one of my newsletters was talking about why women start to gain weight, typically seen at the age of 30. Kind of like the weight gain might trickle on usually around the stomach area. Fat will just redirect itself around the stomach area. So I talked about why that happens and what they can do and who can help them with that.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, so with that really is strength training is like one of the best things for a woman for their health for so many different reasons. And I just talked about the fat aspect. Later on, I'll talk about how it can actually help prevent osteoporosis in the future. So a lot of people don't think about that. They just think of muscle, but they also don't think about their joints and their ligaments and their bones.
Right. Yeah. And how many
So,
people end up I mean, I saw it all the time in hospital,
mhm,
like the fall
yeah,
for a senior
yeah,
citizen, it can be
mhm,
that's the end of life,
yep,
at least quality of life. So
right.
so important now in our 30s, 40s to like have that strength training.
Mhm,
Another thing that and I'm sure you teach us too, is like what you did in your teen and 20s, as far as like hustling and working out extremely, or
mhm,
like fasting without the actual like metabolic stability to do so, and like dealing with so much stress and just working all the time. Like it starts to take its toll, and we
mhm,
have to like really adjust our life to be honoring our
mhm.
cycles and honoring our hormonal profile. It's
Yes.
so important. And I don't, that's not taught. Nobody knows it. Like,
Mm-mm.
that's not just like everyone just knows this, but it's so we
Yeah.
have to. And
Yeah,
there's
for
a lot
sure.
of prices to pay.
For sure. Yeah. And even just like how you were saying, our bodies change and our body's not the same. Like thank God I found someone to help me. But this, I would say since last year, September, my body just started to scream at me. It's like, hey, you're not doing well. So my whole skeleton was just like not having it, really. So I mean, I spent $1,000. It was the fourth person I finally found to help me. Dr. Ashley Solomon at Hope Health and Wellness in Stewart. After the first treatment, I had no pain.
Wow.
I had no pain. I've been having back pain since middle school. And it's kind of equated it to, well, I have a lot of textbooks in my bag and I'm small, but it was, I mean, it's also really stress. Stress will kill you, because I grew up in a abusive household, and I was always like in fight or flight mode, always,
Right, yeah.
really up until like this year. I was always like this, like tense. And what was going on is my back started to curve, and then my hips started to do this and this. And so it was up and then rotated. And then my shoulder blade, my scapula my right was protruding more than my left. And then my neck is actually, I think it's getting better, but my neck is straight. It's supposed to have a curve to it.
Right, yeah.
And it's actually shifted to the right or the left. No, if you're looking at me, it's shifted to the left. So, and I had no idea all that was going on, and so many different things that were going on with me throughout my life, like since elementary school. I was like, oh my God, that's what was causing that the whole time. And so it got to the point where it hurt to stand, sit, and lay flat on my back.
So it was your pain that you were like, okay, this pain is too much now.
I was looking for people. I couldn't even be in Shavasana. I had to put my knees up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible. And so what happened is last year I had this sharp pain in my neck here. So that's what prompted me to get an x-ray. When I got x-rays, I saw more issues. I met somebody else. She did a full body x-ray, and that's when I found out my neck and my hips were messed up. I was
wow.
like, oh my God, like I didn't even know. And so that just opened up a whole new, like, wow. Because I kept also having like terrible muscle spasms back here, a lot of muscle knots.
Yeah.
When it was really my whole skeleton that was just throwing off my muscles. So every time I got a massage, like, oh, you're so tight here, you got like so many knots.
But
and I'm like, oh yeah,
was
that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just turned out it was literally just my skeleton. So yeah, definitely what people were doing, like trauma. I mean, that's why I always tell people therapy. I loved therapy. Therapy helped me a lot, but your traumatic experiences affect your body. Stress affects your body. And women that are have a lot of stress, because everyone has stress, just how you manage it. So women that are having the chronic stress are going to experience hormonal changes worse, because the stress just amplifies.
Right, it does, right? Because your stress hormones are increased.
Stress amplifies, like that cortisol amplifies your symptoms. So women who are having stress, ongoing stress, will experience those hormonal symptoms a lot worse.
Yeah, because we, like you said, we all deal with stress, and we all hear like, you need to manage stress, will kill you. And it's not just a saying. Like, there's so much actual hard evidence, hard science in how detrimental stress is for our health. And like anybody listening, use that, right, as motivation to create the changes, because you don't have to, there's other alternatives. Right? Like our body will speak to us. Like you said, your body was in extreme pain. You couldn't even lay down on the ground. And you took that initiative to follow up. And how many of us are like so busy taking care of other people, or like maybe we don't have the actual financial resources, or like you said, we're limited in our education piece and who to even go to.
Yes.
Like, where do I even go? I have body pain everywhere, or I'm exhausted all the time. I feel like I just got ran over. Like, where do you even start? Right. Like, so those are all limitations that we face. And like, now we live in a day and age where like, when there's a will, there's a way, and finding like a trusted partner like you, or somebody who knows the actual people to refer you to, go to a person who comes highly recommended. And you need to have that trust with that person to be able to make recommendations.
And not everyone has that, like, well, I'm going to find an answer. So what I always tell people is, if you don't get your questions answered, find someone that can answer it. Because I've had people tell me, like, when I was going from gynecologist to gynecologist, like, oh, there's nothing you can do. Like, people have said that to me. There's nothing that you can do. I've had people say that to me about my skeleton. They're like, there's nothing you can do about your curve. You're just going to be like that in pain forever. And I'm like, okay, bye. And then I just like find someone else.
So
because I'm like,
we have to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah.
And if, you know, you weren't taught that, or,
Mhm.
you know, as women, sometimes that's shied against in some ways, you know,
Mhm.
so there's challenges there.
Yeah.
And like, it's up to us to do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the
Especially
most
in
compassionate things we can
cultures.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Find somebody who you look up to, right? Who's a powerful
Mhm.
force and advocates, and like, learn, right? Well, these are things that we
Mhm.
can learn, even if we never grew up
Yeah.
learning them or didn't see that around us. It's skills that we can learn to advocate for ourselves. Like you said, not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. Don't take no for an answer. I'm such a huge advocate on not taking no for an
Yeah.
answer, because like when I was in the waiting room at my chiropractor's office one day, this guy just started talking to me. He's like, I'm so happy I found Dr. Ashley, because he said he was having nausea and dizziness, and he went from doctor to doctor to doctor. You know, they do your blood work, which is a good thing to get. And they're like, oh, your blood work's fine. We don't know what's wrong with you. And he said after 3 treatments with Dr. Ashley, he felt fine because it was his spine.
Which is, yeah, your nervous system. And nervous
Right.
system, you can have all those GI
Yeah.
symptoms.
Yeah. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, just because, like, I had a client and she was having severe headaches. She went from neurologist, getting all the, like, she went to the ER, neurologist, getting all these MRIs and blood work done. And she's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, you know what? Go find someone that can help you. I'm like, if you got to find a holistic doctor, if you got to go to a chiropractor, I'm like, find someone that can help you, because there's a reason. When you have a symptom or something going on with your body is trying to tell you something. It's not just, it is what it is. Like, I don't know.
And it's not clear cut so much of the time.
Mhm.
It's like you're a detective. You and the
Mhm.
people on your path supporting you and figuring this out. Like, it's
Mhm.
not just like, oh, I got GI symptoms. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, this is
Yeah.
the answer. Like, it's so complicated
Yeah.
sometimes. So it does take that
Mhm.
ongoing detective work, not taking
Yes.
no for an answer, and being
Mhm.
like, I know that there's another way to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remembering that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram, menopause.prep. And
Menopause.prep. Okay.
yes. And then on Instagram's all my links. So it's my link to my podcast, link to sign up for my newsletter. I always tell people my newsletter is the best way to get the information, because that's where
Nice.
that more in-depth information comes
Yeah,
from.
I'm on there.
Facebook. I think that's it. Yeah. So my Instagram has my link tree. On my link tree is also a free downloadable checklist. How do I know if I am in perimenopause? So
Oh,
it goes
nice.
through
Okay.
yeah, and that's free right now. It's free. So everything I have right now is free. And I also have a quiz on there, like a fun quiz to test your knowledge about hormonal changes. Because a lot of people, when I tell them about menopause prep, they're like, aren't you too young to be going through that? I'm like, no, because perimenopause can start in your 30s. And then they don't even know what that is, because a lot of people just think it's premenopause and menopause. So that's also a whole other thing, is when I tell people premenopause is actually the moment you get your period. So for me, it was 12 years old, up into where your ovaries will start to begin to make less hormones. So when it starts perimenopause, so premenopause can be from 12 years old or 10 years old to 35, 36, 40, whatever. So perimenopause is when ovaries start to, or begin to make less hormones.
Okay.
That's that phase. And menopause is the time where you do not have a period for 12 months in a row. So a lot of people, when they're like, oh, I'm going through menopause, they're not wrong. It's just really they're in perimenopause.
Perimenopause. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarity.
Yeah. And so that can start in your 30s. And I always tell people, like, you want to be prepared. You don't want something to be going on and you're like, why is this going on? Why is this happening to me? And you're rushing around trying to
Missing
find
that
answers.
sign too. Yeah.
Right.
You don't even realize that that's what it is. So
Yeah.
you have a quiz if you go to your
Yes.
Instagram that people can
Mhm.
access to, like, give them some
Yep.
information about, are
Yep.
they in perimenopause and what's going on with their hormones? That's so important.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
if somebody, like I was saying, I'm building a huge referral list, because the thing is, because menopause and perimenopause is not a medical diagnosis, it's kind of like free for all, like I tell people. So I want to meet and find people everywhere. I mean, I think 2 people in England are signed up for my newsletter. So same thing over
Nice.
there, like same thing over
Yeah.
there. Their doctors and physicians are not trained in perimenopause or menopause. So which is unfortunate. So I'm building a huge referral list. So if you can help, if you're a woman and you can help women in any way, I mean, I even connected with someone that makes homemade candles that are really nice. And, you know, candles are relaxing. They're good for stress management, and homemade soaps and things like that. So even if you're not like a healthcare provider, like you do something like that, that's for relaxation or some type of supplement or something like that, I want to know that person. Like I want them on
Right. So you can
list.
have them in your network and have them as a referral, someone you actually know and have a relationship with.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We've been talking about, my friends and I've been talking about doing that forever. We're like, we really need to have this directory. So we need to get in your directory. You have the directory. You've done it. One question before we go, I had somebody who I told I was going to be on with you who had this question, actually 2 questions. One is, what's the deal with protein? Do we really need 30 grams of protein per meal? Do we need a gram of protein per like pound of ideal body weight? Like, what's the situation with protein?
Okay, so it's for the general population. So when I say general, meaning you do not have some type of health implication that's affecting the way your body processes protein. Like, for example, people that are on dialysis need a lot of protein because they're losing that. So if you're just a generally healthy person, the typical rule is 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So it's really easy. So all you do is you would get a calculator and you
per
would take
kilogram, not pounds.
Yes,
So people are saying pounds. Like, you've probably seen it all over.
I mean,
like,
if you're a bodybuilder, maybe.
yeah, like 30 grams a meal, you need at least a gram or 1.5 grams per pound. I think
For
like
people that are if you're like an extreme athlete, like that's your job, then but
yes.
even then, that's a lot because that puts stress on the kidneys, and people got to take care of their kidneys. So for me, I think I'm 120, actually, I don't think I'm even 120 pounds yet. So 120 pounds, and you would divide it by 2.2, which will give you kilos, so kilograms. So for me, rounding up the 55, so times 0.8, so it'll be 44 to 55 grams of protein a day for me. I am on a high animal protein diet, so I might do the 55. So even though I say I'm on a high protein diet, for me, it would be like that end of the, like that range. So like the 1 gram per kilogram of my body weight.
So that advice of you need 30 grams of protein with every meal, for you, that'd be 90 grams of protein or 120, right? Like if that's a general blanketed thing that people are sharing, that's way too much. You're saying,
yeah, that is way too much.
Build muscle. You've probably seen it though, right? Like that's something that's like
I've seen it. I've heard
people
say that. I've heard people say that, and that's typically people that are I think they kind of, honestly, I think 2 things happen. One, I think people see it and they don't read it thoroughly, and they're like, oh, gram per pound
instead of kilogram,
of kilogram.
Yeah.
And then I've seen that that is a thing with, like I said, if you are on like dialysis, people who are on dialysis need a lot more protein.
Right.
They also need a lot more like iron because they're losing it in that their dialysis treatments. If somebody is at risk of dialysis, they actually need to be on a low protein diet. Like if somebody has kidney disease, to protect the kidneys, they would actually need to be on like 0.6 to 0.8. But I mean, I work out like 2 to 3 times a week, and I still do, I would say, about my 55 grams of.
And you're able to you're building muscle.
Oh yeah.
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 Oh yeah, girl. Yeah, you are. So then one more question. What's your take on intermittent fasting?
I think intermittent fasting works really well for people that are busy bees, because for women, our hormones play a huge role in our overall health. I mean, like I was saying, and that'll be in my future newsletters, but osteoporosis, like when hormones start to drop, it really affects the way our bodies process calcium, phosphorus, vitamin D, magnesium, all those bone nutrients. And men don't have that. I mean, their hormones do play a role in their health, but for women, it's a lot more intense. So, oh my God, I forgot the question.
So So with fasting, what's your take on
Fasting, yeah.
intermittent fasting?
So for women, I think that I didn't take enough CBD today. So for women, so I always say, honestly, the best way to maintain your metabolism is to eat small portions, like the size of your palm, every 3 hours. Now, a lot
Oh
of
man, I
people
don't know the
can't do
last
that.
time.
A
Yeah,
lot of
that's
people can't do that because of their job, like working. Like I work from home, so I'm able to do that. I'm able to get up, eat whenever I want to, eat on that scheduled time. But a lot of people, unfortunately, they can't because they're working like a 9 to 5 and they have structured like breakfast, lunch, dinner. That is it. So I think the next best thing would be intermittent fasting, because a lot of people's problems are they eat right before bed or they eat like in the middle of the night, like they'll get up and like snack in the middle of the night, and that throws off their metabolism. And I tell people when you sleep, typically you're supposed to sleep for about 6 to 8 hours a night. I call that like a spa time for your body. So like your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system is supposed to like go into rejuvenation state. Your heart rate gets maintained, your blood pressure, your glucose levels. So intermittent fasting really helps regulate your metabolism. So it's a good structured, scheduled way of eating. And I think that is like the next best thing if someone is not able to eat small portions every 3 hours. Because when I tell people I eat 5 to 6 times a day, they're like, how? And I'm like, well, you didn't let me finish.
yeah,
like
yeah, small portions.
I eat
And
small
you have
portions.
that availability, like that's
Right.
possible
And I
for you
have,
given your lifestyle.
yeah. Because typically that would be the best way. But unfortunately, like I said, with people's busy lives, and some people are working 2-3 jobs, intermittent fasting would be the best thing for them. Because it does really help regulate their blood pressure, blood sugars, and that fasting that's supposed to happen at nighttime.
Awesome.
But I always tell people to look into it because there's different kinds. There are different, like there's some that are like a 6-hour window. I don't really agree with the 6-hour window, because I also tell people, like, if you look at the back of a bottle on a multivitamin, typically you are needing to get those with your food. But I'm a huge believer in multivitamins just because your day doesn't always go the way you planned. So I tell people to think about like all the vitamins. There's 13, I always forget, 13 vitamins, and I think there might be minerals. There's a bunch of essential vitamins and minerals that we need to get from food, because you're not absorbing 100% of your vitamins and minerals from a multimineral. Right. That's not how the body works. So I tell people it's really about nutrients, not so much like calories. I'm a very nutrient focused dietitian. So I tell people if they can eat a variety of foods throughout the day, if they're able to get the different nutrients that you need.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing your expert knowledge with us. I appreciate what you shared too about protein, because I've been seeing that and I'm like, oh man, I'm really falling short on my protein.
No,
big times. And maybe I misread it myself too. Maybe I missed the kilogram to pound situation.
It happens, well. and then what happens is when that person misreads it, then they tell everyone else.
Right.
Because I've had a lot of clients come to me like, am I supposed to be drinking 8 bottles of water a day? I'm like, girl, that is way too much. That's a gallon.
Yeah, like that 75 hard challenge is like a gallon of water a day. I'm like, that's way too much water for the majority of people. Like, unless you're big person sweating it out and you still need to replace your electrolytes if you're drinking that much water. Yeah. And then the same thing. Yeah, I'm a fan of intermittent fasting and like doing it correctly and honoring where you're at in your cycle. Like I'm big on,
because some people will only eat like 2 times a day. I'm like, how are you getting all your nutrients, like all your vitamins and all your minerals, just eating twice a day?
Yeah, it's when you're looking at it from a nutrient standpoint.
Right. Because a lot of people just look at it as a weight standpoint, because looking at food from a nutrient standpoint and a weight standpoint are two
totally different things. Yeah. So question for everybody who is watching. Yeah. Are you looking at food from a nutrient standpoint or from that, weight control standpoint, which just something to notice. And
Mhm.
like, what would it be like to focus more on eating nutrient rich
Nutrients,
foods
yeah.
and like what you want to use your food for, because it does have that ability to aid in healing and
Mhm.
energy and going through perimenopause in a way that's not treacherous, right? It doesn't have to be,
Mhm.
if we can take care of our
Mhm.
hormonal profile and work with experts like Vanessa. Well, thank you so much. And one more time,
Thank
where can
you.
people find you?
Instagram, so it's menopause.prep. And then on Instagram's all my links.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Bye.